We're at the ISM 2000 conference in Orlando, Florida. Fabulous conference. If you're not here, you're really missing it. You folks need to get plugged in to ISM. We have two special guests with us. We have ML Peck, who's the Chief Content and Engagement Officer for the Institute for Supply Management, and we have Donna Citale, who is the Director of Audience Development for thomasnet.com. Another great organization. Pull out your iPads or your computers and go to thomasnet.com. Check them out. But they're here today to talk about the 30 Under 30 program, a program that they, between them, created 4 years ago. Would that be right? Who's got that answer? ML?
So, thank you, first of all, for having us, Tim and Lou. We really appreciate it. And ISM and Thomasnet got together, and we were talking about the program 4 or 5 years ago, and we actually launched the first program at ISM's annual conference in 2014 in Las Vegas.
Right, okay.
So we've just honored the third year of recipients. The program honors 30 supply chain rock stars that are 30 years or under as of December 31st.
Okay.
And it's an opportunity for these stars to be a shining example of just how exciting and rewarding a career in supply chain is, to attract more younger people, millennials, pretty soon Gen Zs, to the supply chain field, and also to raise awareness of the value and the unique value and capabilities that millennials bring.
No doubt, no doubt. Now, Donna, how did Thomasnet get involved in it, and more importantly, what do you look for in the 30 Under 30?
Well, again, thanks, Tim, for having us today. I think the program was a natural fit for ISM and Thomasnet because we have a 100-year history together. Way back in the day, a sales rep from Thomas Register brought together a group of purchasing agents to talk about what are the challenges in what they do, and that became the National Association of Purchasing Managers. New York was the first chapter, which then springboarded into the national or global, I always forget how we say this. Anyway, so we've had a long history together. We
Right.
share missions. We share missions in helping supply chain professionals do their jobs better. And the way you do that is by bringing talented individuals into the organization. And I think the 30 Under 30 program effectively does that. So we came up with the idea about 5 years ago, and we finally had the opportunity to sit down and put the program together. And we can't tell you how happy we've been since then that the objectives that ML just stated, they're true. We're making a difference. Millennials are now choosing supply chain as an option. And I think, ML, there's a stat around that?
There is. And so in our first year of winners in 2014, 17% of them proactively chose supply management as a career.
Right.
We just surveyed the 2016 winners, and 40% of them proactively chose supply management as a career. So, in addition to the 30 Under 30 program, obviously Thomasnet and ISM, we have a lot of other initiatives to help really, again, raise the awareness of supply chain as a viable and rewarding career. But what we've been able to, I think, get across through this 30 Under 30 program, and what the winners themselves, who are all very impressive, have been able to really demonstrate, is that the decisions that they're making, even at that young age, are affecting their company's brand, their competitive positioning, and their bottom line performance. These winners are true role models for future supply chain leaders, and also for people that are currently in the field.
I'd like to say one thing about what Thomas was and what Thomas is. And we had the pleasure of speaking with Tony Uphoff a few moments ago, the new president of Thomas, that Thomas Register was exactly that. It was a big telephone book years ago, and it survived that for 100 years, or maybe a little less than 100. Is it less?
Thomas Register went to their 100th edition, yes, it did.
Okay, so they did make it to the 100, but now you're taking on a whole different platform of being more than just a yellow page. It's to supply address and phone numbers of possible suppliers. You're now going deeper into training, into the people who are involved in supply chain, And I think it's a completely and radical change that Thomas is going through.
Absolutely.
And I think it's terrific. I really do. And the work the two of you do for the common good of the millennials is great, considering that the millennials have had a bad rap for a bit, and now we're beginning to see a different millennial.
Right. So when we get hundreds of nominations. The number increase every year. They're more qualified every year, and the job becomes harder every year. So, really does. It's a very time-intensive project. We take it very seriously. But when we look at the nominations, who are we looking for? And we're looking for those that have acute business acumen, right? But it goes beyond that. They're multi-talented. They can juggle things. They're multitasking. They're natural leaders. They're quick on their feet, right? That's number one. We look for movers and shakers within the organization. They motivate and mobilize. They're mobilizing those individuals that work for them, horizontally to them and to the major stakeholders. And they're getting this done. People are taking direction from them. It's so impressive. And finally, they're trailblazers. The things that make them win are firsts. First one in their organization to create this process or to revamp this process.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at the end of the day, the final criteria is passion. It's not a job. It is a passion. When you meet them in person, when they talk about their jobs, their careers, the smiles, they're proud, the pride that comes through, and it's something that we always talk about. There's pride in supply chain management, and if I've ever seen it, it's from these 30, 60, and now 90 individuals that we work with.
Do you have any stats on, for example, the first year winners as to what's happened to any of them in the 3 years since?
So we keep in touch with the previous cohorts, and we are at some point, we've been talking about doing a Where Are They Now, but we don't think 3 years is quite enough time.
Right.
So probably within the next couple of years, we will have a Where Are They Now. But as you would expect, they are all advancing, and they're all moving forward, and they are continuing to make change. Some have decided to pursue more focus on their education. Some have gone higher up in the supply chain, different industries. They love change. They love switching. They're very flexible and open, and they want to lead. And so with those sorts of characteristics, we're seeing what you would expect to see. Advancement, people want to recruit them. You meet them, you talk to them, you want to hire them. Their passion, to Donna's point, comes through. And then they can back up that passion with really strong technical skills.
Well, I just wanted to add to that. If you saw the keynote that Tom Derry did this morning, he had introduced the keynote, and then he introduced the class of 30 under 30, and he came right out and said there's going to be a lot of business cards coming their way. They are now highly sought after, and that just, again, sometimes I think of us like proud mothers of what we can help these kids do.
And I would just add on the flip side of that as well too, the companies that the winners represent, those companies become sought after by millennials, right? Because millennials can see that the companies really value the unique differences that they bring, that they value efficiency, that they value contributions over seniority.
They're also creating the cultural changes within the companies, which then becomes a draw to more young folks, young professionals that like that type of environment. So they're exacting that change as well.
Right. Has there been, you had mentioned a moment ago about millennials, they like change, they like working for different companies. That was one of the things that I think turned some people off about millennials, that they were looking to, they'll work for a year, 2 years, 3 years, then they go to another job, that they don't find the home and stick with it.
So I think that's a little bit of a misnomer. When you look at last year's megawatt, Amy Fluke, Amy Georgie with Fluke.
With Fluke.
She has been with Fluke for several years, nearly a decade, right?
Yeah.
But I think companies need to understand what millennials are looking for as well too.
Right.
It's not just about the fast advancement. They want to be challenged. They want accountability. They want ownership. And I will tell you, as somebody who supervises people, oh my God, that is a dream come true.
Right.
Most of your issues are because people won't take accountability. This cohort, they want to own it and run with it. So we do need to be more flexible as hiring managers, and we do need to understand and maybe adapt a little bit to their style to get more in return. They will work, they're not going to come in and work in a cubicle from 9 to 5 with an hour lunch. That's just not their style. They're going to be on their phones. You might think that they're texting, but they probably are either on a social media group, or if they are texting, they're texting a supplier. It's not all personal. They just do things differently.
Right.
And the best companies are starting to accommodate that and recognize that. These kids will come in and, they'll put 8 hours in at the office, might knock off an hour early to go to their kids' recital, but then they're going to put 5 more hours in between, 8 and 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
So it's just having that flexibility and being open to change. The worst thing you can tell a millennial is, well, that's just the way we've always done things. And I think that's what was happening in a lot of these larger organizations, because these kids want to make a difference. They want to impact their community, their workforce, their team, and their company. And if they don't feel that they can, then they're not motivated to stay. They just have different motivators.
I think I spoke to one of the winners last night, and he said, "Oh no, I've been with my company for 6 years." Now remember, these kids are in their 20s, so
Right.
6 years. Again, it is a
It's quite a
misnomer.
commitment.
Yeah,
Quite
and
a
he was
commitment.
extremely proud of it. He said, a lot of my friends, they're on their second, third job. He said, "I love what I do. I love where I am." And he didn't even let on the least bit that he would ever, be interested in moving. And it's because of all that ML just said. He's challenged daily. He is making changes.
Good commitment. Good
It's a
commitment.
good commitment.
Emil, I wanted to divert just for a second, because there's something very unique happening in supply chain. You've seen it over the last 10 years, where supply chain used to be a back office basement operation, and now it is a strategic C-suite operation. And these millennials, I can see why they're excited about their future. But ISM has done a lot with you and Tom Derry and the rest of your team to lead, not follow the trend, but to lead the trend with ISM and all of the things you put together. Could you speak about that? It's got to be terribly exciting for you.
It is very exciting, and the reason we do that is because that is our mission. Our mission is to advance the practice of procurement, and you can't do that if you don't lead. But everything that we do is developed for practitioners by practitioners, and I think that's kind of our secret sauce, right? Anything, the mastery model, the CPSM, EISM. We don't do this in an ivory tower. We do our research, but then we really work with practitioners. We're talking with them daily, trying to understand what are they seeing, what are some of the needs that they have, what trends are they foreseeing. It's just basically serving our customers. And the 30 Under 30 program is one of the best things that we can do to help our customers and advance the practice. And so as we were speaking with ThomasNet about that, we were both organizations completely aligned on that. We knew that there was a supply chain shortage basically in talent for supply chain, and it was affecting the vitality of our industry. And if something didn't happen, if we didn't take a stand and try to address this issue, it was going to fall off a cliff. So we felt very, very strongly about what we did with this program, and Donna, you may want to add more to that. But that's why we came together, is to address this huge talent management shortage, including some of the misperceptions that are out there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think I can add to that. It was so well said. It's
a great idea, and the trick is how to expand it, keep it going, and just keep blowing it up. 30 under 30 is an interesting number, but we have tens of thousands of people out there that deserve the same kind of recognition and training and acknowledgement. So maybe you'll do 100, no, 30 under 100.
100 under 100, yeah.
No, that's my group.
And so the reason we started with the 30 under 30 was because there was a major issue of attracting younger talent to supply chain. Supply chain has had and still primarily does have a reputation issue. It's not seen as the interesting, rejuvenating function that it is. We've gotten a lot more. We've made up a lot more ground, as you said, moving from back office to strategic,
right,
because then it does become more attractive to students as they're selecting majors and things like that, right? Steve Jobs and Tim Cook made a big deal about supply chain and really raised awareness of that. Mary Barra with GM. And as we're seeing more and more of those role models coupled with programs like that, this, I think, will help address that shortage. But we specifically started with 30 under 30 because that's where the talent was. The gaps were. We had managers. We had people above managers. They were getting ready to retire, and they had nobody backfilling them.
Right.
So we had to start somewhere, and we had to start with something that we could commit to and do with 100% dedication. And so that's where we started with 30 under 30.
I think you should do a 30 under 75.
So
They're
ML,
still out there.
ML, the skills gap, which is so often talked about, or Donna, and the skills gap, how do you see that? I mean, clearly 30 under 30 is helping to backfill that, as you were talking about. Are you beginning to make progress? Are the universities, I know that Michigan State University has a supply chain curriculum where you can graduate with a degree. Are the universities now flowing on board with this and saying, wow, we got to jump on this because this is the future for our students?
I would say that over the last several years, we've seen a pretty significant increase in the number of colleges and universities offering a supply chain major, whether that's logistics, procurement, supply chain, right?
Right.
So that is very good, and it is a good feeder. But we're still finding oftentimes students are falling into it, or we hear, I went to school for marketing or finance or business, and I took a supply chain class, and my teacher was really passionate, and it got me passionate.
Okay.
We want them to intentionally choose it. But, there is another interesting thing that you raise is when you look at skills, and you look at the skills that are needed in business, and the skills that these millennials bring. And Donna was mentioning some really interesting trends that we noticed from these winners and from our interviews and discussions with them.
Yeah, there's a couple that they all have, right? So communication. One other media publication that actually surveyed about half of our winners, 72% of them said that communication was the most important skill. Now, when you think about millennials, right, I think to ML's point before, maybe
right.
People don't think that texting is communication, right? But as ML said earlier, they're making decisions that affect brand, the competitor, your competitive position and your bottom line. These are very highly visible. To make those changes, you need to communicate.
Right.
You're convincing stakeholders that are usually, if not 2 times your age, 3 times your age.
Right.
So that's another trend, a bad rap that millennials are getting. And I think the best example I can give of that is our very first megawatt winner, Katie Maynor, Katie Conrad. She was nominated by David Allen. They were both of Shell. David retired last year.
Okay.
So the age gap was incredible. But for them to work together, it was all about communication. And I just really find that you don't think that they think it's important. They know it's important, and they're really, really good at it. Whether that's text, whether that's an email, whether that's in creating relationships with suppliers. Crazy. So that's number one. The second thing, when we asked them who their role models were, they said their parents.
And this
Fascinating.
is the third year in a row.
Fascinating.
So, it is, right? Fascinating. And I don't even know what else to say about that, but it just shows you the kind of people these kids are. And also, they're big on giving back. They work hard.
Yeah.
That's great.
They have families, but they're making time to mentor others, because a lot of them have mentors, have been mentored, in supply chain. and they also volunteer a lot. And the last thing that I can say about them, after meeting them in person, right? So we look at the nominations on paper, and then we do some interviews via the phone. But you meet them, they're humble. They're saving companies $26 million, $13 million. They're humble, they're thankful, they're grateful for the leeway that they've gotten in the company and for the nominations. And to me, everybody says millennials have chips on their shoulders, etc. They are grateful individuals.
Where do we get some?
Again, it's heartwarming to me.
Yeah, of course.
This program has really changed the way I think about a lot of things out there, and to me, that's a huge testament to the program.
That's excellent.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned parents, because manufacturing as a whole has not done as well in convincing parents that that's a good choice for their children. But clearly procurement and supply chain and logistics has. So congratulations to both of you, to ThomasNet, to ISM, for putting together and tracking a terrific program that can do nothing but have these millennials talking to other millennials, and word of mouth excitement, passion, enthusiasm will carry that program forward. Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it.
We
Nice seeing
appreciate
you
it.
again.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining us on Manufacturing Talk Radio. If you'd like to be a guest on our show, contact us at info@mfgtalkradio.com. We'll see you next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at mfgtalkradio.com.